It's very difficult to capture this entire behemoth. We just simply have to turn these knobs.
Space is pretty good. Water pressure feels pretty good as well.
I love these things. They're a lot of fun to drive,
And they're even more fun to have for your adventures.
Behold, the majestic Sprinter van. I'm Zachary Diehl, and this is a 2015 Mercedes Sprinter van that is built out to be the perfect camper van solution. Now, if you or someone you know is interested in buying a Sprinter van and you want to learn more about this one in particular, all the details will be on carsandbids.com, and the link will be available in the bio below. Now, of course, because this is no typical car, we're going to break this into 4 stages. Number 1, a little bit of history on the Sprinter van itself. Number 2, your view from the cockpit. Number 3, what life on the road is going to look like from the interior of your Sprinter van. And number 4, a couple of driving impressions. And if you couldn't already tell, it's very difficult to capture this entire behemoth in one shot. So let's step inside for a second and talk about the history of the Sprinter van. Now, the first ones to get the Sprinter van were actually the Europeans. In 1995, Mercedes-Benz debuted the Sprinter van for European markets. And in those first couple of years, they did so well that Americans started to think, well, maybe we want some of those as well. And so Mercedes-Benz obliged, and in 2001, they brought the Sprinter van to the United States market. And those first couple of years were kind of interesting for the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van, because in 2003, Daimler Chrysler Vans LLC actually took over the Sprinter van, and the Sprinter van was rebranded, rebadged, with Dodge badges. And in 2004, Chrysler Commercial Vehicles then again took over, and they started marketing the Sprinter van instead. Now, however, the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van is mostly marketed by, well, Mercedes. Now, the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van has gone through a number of iterations, 3 generations to be exact, with a 2.5 in there somewhere as well. From 1995 to 2006 was the first generation, and then from 2006 to 2018 was the second generation. But in 2013, Mercedes-Benz made some upgrades, and that happens to be exactly the one that we're sitting in right now, because this is a 2015, so it received those same upgrades from 2013 and is a generation 2.5. Now, the Sprinter vans from 2019 onwards up to present day, that's the 3rd generation. Now, the Sprinter van went through an interesting evolution because obviously it was originally marketed as a commercial van vehicle. But over time, people started to catch on with just how good these things were in terms of space, efficiency, etc., to turn into a camper van. And nowadays, about 50% of these are sold for commercial purposes, and the other 50%, well, they're sold mostly for recreational purposes. And in many other countries, the Sprinter van is used as a police van or an ambulance. What do you call a vehicle that can be a police van, an ambulance, can haul packages, or can be turned into a very luxurious and comfortable camper van? Well, in my book, I'd call that a jack of all trades. With a little bit of Sprinter van history now out of the way, let's just quickly touch on Sportsmobile. That's the van conversion company that actually converted this particular Sprinter van right here. The company was founded in 1961 by Curtis and Charles Borski, and they have 3 locations, one in Huntington, Indiana, one in Austin, Texas, and one in Fresno, California, and they're considered the oldest van conversion company in the United States. So well revered, in fact, that even the late, great Jimmy Buffett had several Sportsmobiles, one, in fact, that he loved very dearly, called the Green Tomato, a very surf-oriented van conversion. And now let's get into talking about this particular Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van right here. This is a 3500 170 wheelbase, which means 170-inch wheelbase, and it has dual rear tires as well. That's an important piece. Secondly, it's a high roof version, as you can tell, which means it is much taller than the standard roof version, or the mid-roof version as it's sometimes called, and plenty of room to stand up inside of. One of my absolute favorite pieces to highlight just how big these vehicles are is the fact that they have this sort of footstool on the front bumper just so that you can access the engine bay. You're just gonna hop up here, and then you can see inside. And speaking of that engine, this Sprinter van right here is powered by a 3-liter turbodiesel engine, pushing out about 188 horsepower and 325 foot-pounds of torque. Now, if you're a sports car nut, that probably doesn't sound like a lot, but I can assure you, this thing has no problem keeping up on the highway, merging on on-ramps, and accelerating from a dead stop. It's no sports car, certainly, but it doesn't have an issue keeping up. From the front, it has that quintessential Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van look with these big halogen headlights, these fog lights, these forward-facing sensors, and of course, that giant Mercedes front grille. And of course, it wouldn't be a Sprinter van if it didn't have a sliding side door. Now, one other feature of this particular Sprinter van that I really, really like is these particular tires right here, because they are unbelievably quiet on road and they still handle very well off-road as well. And they're wrapped around the Mercedes-Benz factory steelies. And like I mentioned when I was up front, these rear wheels are dual rear wheels. And that helps immensely with carrying the weight of this vehicle and providing you additional traction when you're in inclement weather or perhaps off-road. But of course, if you're driving this thing on your next journey, you want to know, what does this thing look like up front? And to be honest, even for a Mercedes, this front cockpit view isn't super complicated and overwhelming. Now, I know it might seem silly, but one of my favorite parts about this Sprinter van cockpit is the simplicity in the steering wheel buttons. I feel like I get into so many vehicles nowadays that have so many buttons on the steering wheel that it's more of a distraction than anything else. Here we only have about 8 buttons and they control the volume up and down, hang up and answer phone calls, and a couple of other buttons to control the info display in the center of your dash. Moving on, we also have our, of course, Sprinter van shifter, and why wouldn't it be Mercedes-Benz branded? Just like most things Mercedes-Benz, they're branded Mercedes-Benz. And then in the center, we have our Alpine head unit. That is not factory. That is an aftermarket head unit. And then here we have our AC and climate controls. And of course, they make a great Mercedes sound. Right. You really know you're changing the temperature when you hear that sound. And then down below it, we have our 4-way flashers and a couple of other buttons. We have our lane departure assist, which you can turn on and off, and our forward collision warning, which you can turn on and off as well. And one thing that's interesting about these Sprinter vans is that you can lock the back half and the front half separately. So right here, I can lock the whole vehicle, or if I hit this button below it, I can lock just the back half of the vehicle. Now, in my opinion, this overview isn't really worth much if I don't actually test and use this living space, especially considering, well, that's what you'd be buying it for. So last night, I spent the night in here getting comfortable, getting used to the amenities, so to speak, inside of this Sprinter van. And this morning, I can give you a lot more detailed review of exactly how comfortable it is and functional. That's another important thing. Now, starting with one of the most important features in my mind, it's the bed. The key to a great adventure is a great night's sleep. And this bed is super comfortable. Not only is the cushioning very plush and soft, but the width and size of the bed is also very, very good. I would say you could fit probably up to 4 people on this bed if you really wanted to try doing that. But 2 is more than comfortable. 3 is comfortable as well. And the length I'm really impressed with. Now, I'm 6'5", and I can lay in this bed end to end perfectly comfortably. Now, the next thing I really love about this bed area is how easily it converts back into your living room / dinette area. It's very simple, and I'm going to show you in real time just how quick it is. First of all, we're going to take out these center pillows. They become the backrests for our dinette. There are other pillows right there. Same thing on the other side. Then we're going to take out this centerpiece. We're going to flip that, stow that right on the floor. And that's where our dinette table actually goes into. And then we're going to take this piece, lift it up, pull the back, and we're done. Back to a living room. Another really essential piece to any good Sprinter van is being able to have a bathroom and a shower on board. And right in here is exactly what that is. So we'll undo this top strap here, hold this handle, and then in here you have a full bathroom and shower. But the common question is always, is this actually a usable space? Am I actually going to use it? So let's test it. Right up here, we're going to flip on our controls for the hot water system. And then we just simply have to turn these knobs and we'll start getting hot water coming out. All right, well, this isn't too bad in here. The standing room is pretty good. Space is pretty good. Water pressure feels pretty good as well. I would say this is a very usable space. With our morning shower now out of the way, let me just touch on a couple things here. First of all, this shower is not going to be nearly as comfortable as your home shower. It's just the nature of the beast. But secondly, having a hot shower on the road, there's really nothing better than that. Now, the second part of this shower and bathroom setup is obviously, well, the bathroom. And this bathroom was thought out with functionality in mind because it's a very easy to maintain system. You don't need a cassette. You don't need any special plumbing or anything like that. You just simply use this bathroom and then you can take it out and dump it where you need to dump it. That's all it is. Very simple maintenance, very easy to use. I really like that sort of functionality in mind. And another thing of note is these clasps that they use on some of these interior features. These are great. I've been in a lot of Sprinter vans where things aren't secured and you go down a bumpy road and things are rattling all over the place. This is a great idea to just keep things extra secure. Now, of course, if you're sleeping in here, if you're showering in here, you're going to want some privacy. And not only are these rear windows slightly tinted, but they also have two different shade options. So number one, you have a privacy shade. And then number two, you have a light blocking shade so you can sleep comfortably in here. In addition to that, you also get these blackout curtains that hang over the sliding van door and around the front cockpit area as well. And they just simply snap in with some buttons. They're very easy to pop out. And there you go. So you have a functioning window again. Now, since we were just talking about the shower and running water aboard this vehicle, I should also mention the fact that it has a sink inside of it. And it has great water pressure. Pretty impressive. Not only that, but the heated water service also flows into the sink as well. So you get hot water coming out of this too. Now, in your kitchen/living area, you have more cupboard space than I've seen in some houses. I mean, just watch as I pull these out. Huge bin under here. Nice big space under here, probably for your trash can and stuff. Another space back here. That'd probably be good for snacks. Gear storage, shoe storage under here, I would say. Plenty of other places for things, gadgets, items. Anything you can conceive of for more gear storage, more shoe storage, whatever it is. You can fit on board this van. Now, while we're in the kitchen, let's also talk about the fact that you have a fridge on board as well with a freezer on top. And then you have something that's somewhat uncommon in these Sprinter vans, which is a microwave as well. Now, this has a high output alternator that needs to be on when running this microwave. So the vehicle will have to be on if you want to heat up something in here. But this is a really nice piece of kit, especially in a Sprinter van, if you just want something that's hot and kind of on the go. Now, continuing on from all of our cupboard space in the kitchen, you also have tons of overhead space in your living area as well. So anything you need to put up here, like clothes or whatever else you might need for your adventure, you have plenty of room. And I should also mention this fan right here, a really great way to get airflow throughout the cabin of this vehicle. And not only is there one, but there's a second one up here as well. As you can imagine, you also have an inverter system on board this Sprinter van to control everything electrical that's going on in here. While we're here, we should also touch on the lights. These are the interior lights for the inside of the van, and this is the exterior lights. Another really nice feature that I love that Sportsmobile incorporated is these lights as well. They're like a reading light or just additional lighting in your living area. Just to highlight even more of the really well thought out space built in by Sportsmobile into this Sprinter van, you have this outdoor table right here that goes right along where the sliding side door is. And you have this extension for your countertop space as well that folds out too. Not to mention the fact that you also have power outlets right here as well. So you can sit out by your Sprinter van and enjoy the day. Now, lastly, we have to talk about a really special feature that the owner requested be built into this particular Sprinter van. Let me show you what that is. Now, a gear storage space in the back of a Sprinter van isn't all that uncommon nowadays. What a lot of Sprinter vans are doing is what they call a gear garage. But the problem with the gear garage is that it eats into your living space. And if you want to use that living space, you have to reorganize everything in the back of the Sprinter van just to use the space. What I love about this one is that it's all separate from your living space. It's its own space back here. It's all held in with this heavy-duty webbing, and there's heavy-duty hooks so you can hang everything up as well. You can put mountain bikes in here, whatever you want. In the back of here right now, we actually have everything to go kite surfing and climbing. So we've got a surfboard, we've got our kite surfing gear, and we have all of our climbing gear up here as well. It's just a really great utilization of space. As you can see, there's hooks up top all along the roof of the Sprinter van, plus even more hooks down here, ways to secure anything and everything you need to put in the back of the Sprinter van. Back here, it's also worth mentioning the fact that you do also have these privacy blackout shades on the back windows as well, and they just simply move out of the way when you don't need them. You also have this great table space and cubby space on the back doors of the Sprinter van on both sides. But without further ado, I think it's time to take this thing on a drive. All right, so we've just gotten off of some dirt roads, obviously, where we camped last night, and now we're heading back into town, and we have a little bit of a drive to get back
And as you can probably imagine, this thing, it's no Jeep, it's no 4Runner, it's not an off-road dedicated vehicle. However, for the size that this thing is, for the fact that it's a 170 extended, the fact that it's very tall, it handles incredibly well on uneven terrain, off-road terrain, etc. But now let's test just how it feels when we go through town. What always surprises me about these things is just how sort of nimble they feel. Like I said, it's such a big vehicle that you'd expect it to feel a lot like a big vehicle. But I think one thing that sort of helps with the Sprinter van is the fact that it's, first of all, the nose of it cuts off in front of you very well. So you have this great field of vision out ahead of you. And number two, the turning radius on this is relatively good. It's kind of surprising how good it is actually, because again, you'd think such a huge vehicle, it's going to take a big circle to get turned around. But that is not in fact the case. It is relatively easy to move around and maneuver. The other thing that's really funny about the Sprinter van in general is that you kind of get used to the size of it really fast. You wouldn't really expect it, but it doesn't take much time for you to get pretty acquainted to the size of this thing. And sometimes this is good and bad, but sometimes you forget how much is behind you. It really doesn't feel like you're driving a massive vehicle. I remember not too long ago reviewing and driving an expedition vehicle, and it was on an F550 frame, and it had a very large camper on the back of it. And you constantly felt like you were in a massive vehicle. This thing, it just doesn't feel that way. Brakes nicely, easy to slow down, feels good when you come to a stop, doesn't feel like you're about to overshoot, doesn't feel like you've got a bunch of brake fade. It just eases into traffic very nicely. Now, another thing that's really nice with this particular Sprinter van is that it has the lane keeping assist. I'll see if I can get it to trigger for you right now. I'm not sure if you can hear it on camera, but obviously it just gives you a couple of beeps if you cross over the lines on either side of you. And it's just a nice reminder of size, of space, keeps you sort of in check for where you're going. Now let's merge into traffic here. Easy, nimble, flows into traffic very simply. I guess there's sort of this expectation that if you're driving a big vehicle, that there's a lot of drama involved. Just the same way that if you're driving a really fast, expensive, exotic sports car, there's gonna be a lot of drama. But for this thing, like I've said multiple times now, there's not a lot of drama. So now let's test how well it gets up to speed. We're getting onto an on-ramp here. Looks like kind of a short on-ramp as well, with a turn right before it. So we're gonna take the racing line through here. Step on the power. Power delivery is very good. You can really feel that turbo diesel starting to kind of spool up. Nice. Just about 3,500, 3,600 RPM. And now we're back up to about 65 miles an hour. And at 65 miles an hour, it's a pretty gentle cruise. I mean, we're sitting at about 2,400 RPM, going uphill, easy to keep up with traffic. Again, I've driven a lot of these overlanding and off-road type vehicles, and their greatest pitfall is usually the fact that once you get onto a highway, well, they're not built for the highway, So you end up getting on the highway and things are kind of chaotic and you're trying to keep up pace with traffic and it's just not happening. Luckily in this thing, it's a very easy cruiser in traffic. It doesn't feel like you're impeding traffic in any way, which is the nice thing. I think the other thing that really helps the Sprinter van a lot of times as well is the width of it. Again, with a lot of off-road vehicles that I've driven in the past, a lot of these overlanding builds, camper van builds, whatever they are, they're very wide. They take up a lot of the lane, and it becomes very hard to sort of stay in the lane. But this thing, it doesn't feel like that. It feels, again, like I said, it feels like you're a road-going car, which is how it should feel, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of miles in one of these, which I would imagine if you're buying a Sprinter van, you're probably thinking about doing lots of road miles. Steering is nice and tight. I feel like I'm in control of it all the time. Again, a really nice feeling in a big vehicle. And of course, I have my blind spot monitors as well. Again, something that really helps, especially with a big vehicle. to have a blind spot monitor as well. I see somebody coming up on my left-hand side right now. Easy. Knew they were there. Knew they were in my blind spot. I believe I said this before, but the Sprinter van is just the jack of all trades. It does everything pretty well, you know? Again, it's not the perfect highway vehicle. It's not the perfect off-road vehicle, but it doesn't lack in either of those categories either. It's not like you're unable to traverse down a bumpy dirt road, and it's not like you're unable to keep up at highway speeds either. I really want to point out the field of view that you have in this vehicle as well. I'm always really impressed when I drive these Sprinter vans because, again, they're big vehicles, obviously, and sometimes with big vehicles, you have big blind spots. And with this thing, it's just, I don't feel like that. I have this massive windshield in front of me that has a huge field of view. The windows on the doors as well are very big, lots of visibility, great size for the mirrors too. I feel like I can see everything. And then I can obviously see out of my rear sliding door as well. And I can even still see out of my rear mirror, my rear facing mirror, I can see through those back windows too. So lots of good visibility in this thing. Definitely keeps you comfortable, keeps you feeling safe and sound on the road. Now I know we talked about the horsepower and torque numbers for this vehicle earlier in the video, and I'm sure a lot of you were sitting there with some cautious skepticism about whether or not that would feel like it's enough when you're driving down the road. I can assure you, cruising down the road, cruising down the highway, you really don't feel like you're lacking anything. This turbo diesel engine just sort of hums along. I'm going about 65, 70 miles an hour right now. I don't feel like it's struggling to do that at all. So what we're doing right now is heading back from our little adventure, our camping trip, and we have a couple of hours of driving ahead of us. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you a little pause, and I'm gonna check back in with you in about an hour and tell you if this thing is still comfortable from the driver's seat. We've been on the road for about another hour, merging back onto the highway here, and this thing definitely picks up nicely, able to glide into traffic pretty easily. So to give you a review on what it's like driving for a long period of time in this thing, it's very comfortable. I like this seating position. Again, I think I've said that already, but you're up nice and high, kind of above everything, and you have a great field of view. Not only that, but the seats are very comfortable. Of course, you have these little flip down armrests as well if you need them. Everything is very comfortable in here. Everything's very driver oriented to keep you comfortable on long road trips and lots of seat time. So in my opinion, a Sprinter van, especially this Sprinter van, is one of the best things that you can get your hands on if you are interested in going out and seeing a lot of the world. There is, in my opinion, almost no more comfortable of a way to travel while still being relatively light and nimble. Obviously, a lot of people look at these compared to RVs and stuff like that. And RVs are big. They don't go into a lot of places. But this thing, it's so nice size-wise because it's still, you can pull into a store regularly. You can do whatever you need to do on the regular and still drive this as a relatively regular car. But then you have maximum comfort when you're ready for an adventure and you're going to spend a bunch of time off-grid, off-road, whatever it is. So I love these things. I really do. They're a unique car. They're special. They're a lot of fun to drive, and they're even more fun to have for your adventures.